I welcome you all to the post-lunch session on third day of AICTE Atal-sponsored faculty development program on atmospheric remote sensing methods and advances. In continuation with this session, to share his knowledge and expertise in the field of ground and space-based aerosol retrieval, we have Dr. P.R. Sinha with us. Welcome, sir. Dr. Sinha obtained his PhD in physics in 2012 while working at TIFR Balloon Facility in Hyderabad. He was also a postdoctoral fellow and project assistant professor during 2015 to 2017 at University of Tokyo, Japan. Then after he joined as faculty at Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, Thiruvananthapuram in January 2019. His primary area of research include aerosol dynamics, aerosol radiative forcing, aerosol cloud interaction, aerosol boundary layer interaction, and teaching includes radiation process in atmosphere and ground, and satellite-based measurement techniques and instrumentation for atmospheric science study. He participated in many national and international field campaigns over land and ocean. He authored and co-authored 34 research papers in peer-reviewed journals in this field. Sir, we welcome you on this session and extend our gratitude for accepting this invitation to be a part of this session. Sir, I invite you to kindly proceed with your session.
Thank you, Jayanti, for a nice introduction, and I thank you. Thanks also organizer for this opportunity to interact the country's young and brilliant scientists, faculties. It is not an easy task to prepare a talk which can normalize wide spectrum of participants, but I have tried to in my presentation that I'll give a very overview so that you can follow up. And I was given a title of ground-based and space-based retrieval of aerosols. This is basically a 3-credit course which I teach at IST. And combining 45 lecture into one lecture with wide spectrum of participants is not easy for me and also for you to get it in. But we'll try as much as we can. So in my talk, I'll keep the essence, and if you have very specific to the topic, please feel free to write to me whenever you feel. Okay, so I welcome for this lecture, and I'll start. So I have organized this talk as follows. I will briefly mention the atmospheric compositions near Earth's surface and brief introduction about atmospheric aerosols and clouds, why we need to study aerosol and clouds, and observational efforts to to mitigate the present climate and weather issues. And then I'll give a summary, and then we'll have a quiz which I think organizer will conduct at the later part, and then some useful information I believe that may be very useful for you, the faculty from different colleges and universities. So, one thing that I will request organizer to share this presentation with all the participants. So I make sure that you will have the copy of these presentations. So let's start with that. So atmospheric composition near the surface. This is the cartoon which shows that the major atmospheric composition. So if you remember that, you might be knowing that the 99% is contributed by the oxygen and nitrogen molecule, and remaining 1% is contributed by rest or inert gases. And in that also, the carbon dioxide, in that 1% includes the carbon dioxide, and then other, the trace amounts like methane, then carbon monoxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide, NO2, CFC. And that small fraction of is the particulate matter. So you see that why I wanted to show you this figure is that the parameter which we are dealing with that basically control the entire the atmospheric radiation and weather and climate issue. You see here the fraction is atmospheric aerosols. So though his contribution by volume is very small to the atmospheric composition, but the impact is very high, significant compared to rest all parameters. So that's a lesson for life also. We may be very small, but we can make really a big difference if we really want it. So this is my primary area where I'll be mainly focusing on during this talk. So atmospheric aerosols. The atmospheric aerosols are a very fine sized particles, which can be emitted from variety of sources such as sea salt, dust, volcanic eruptions, black carbon, sulfate, and other organic matter. And because of this variety of sources, you see the size ranges. It is from 10 to the power minus 3 micrometer to 10 to the power 2 micrometers. An order of 5 magnitude variation. You can think of how the variable this aerosol particles. The major chemical composition of these particles are basically mineral dust, sea salt, sulfate, soot or black carbon, organic matter, nitrate. And if you see the morphology of this scanning electron microscope, you can see that a very different morphology of different types of particles, because they are originated from different different sources actually. And they are basically primary. It can be directly emitted from the source, or secondary, which is converted from one, for example, gas to particle conversion. That is categorized as a secondary aerosols. But the particle which is coming from, let's say, sea salt, from the sea, or from biomass burning, that can be categorized, or dust region, Thar region, from the desert, it can be categorized as a primary aerosols. So these are the two major categories of primary and secondary. Now, you might have learned from the last two talks from the today's two speaker that the aerosol particles have both it has both scattering as well as absorbing type nature, depending upon its chemical properties. So if it is a scattering type particle, it can interact with the incoming solar radiation, and it can scatter the radiation back to the space, and it will have a cooling effect. So in such particles includes dust, sea salt, sulfate, and nitrate. Other category is absorbing type aerosols, which can absorb the radiation and not allow the radiation going back to the space. It does not allow any amount of radiation to be scattered back, because it is completely absorbed within the particle. And such particles include black carbon and dust. And I'll be also referring the important concept of the phase function in my later part of this talk. So I thought to introduce here the forward and backward scattering. So if this is the particle and this is the incoming solar radiation, and the amount of radiation when it interacts, the electromagnetic radiation, it is scattered at particular directions, opposite, along the direction of the electromagnetic wave. And this angle is called scattering angle. Now, if it is a very tiny particles like gaseous molecule, then it can scatter uniformly. So you categorize as an isotropic scattering. That means if you measure the intensity at 360 degree, okay, you will get the same intensity. But if the target is slightly bigger, like aerosol particles, then it depends upon the size of the particle. It may have a forward and backward. So in this case, the distribution will not be uniform. It may not be isotropic. It will be anisotropic. And that is why the concept of phase function and asymmetry parameter comes into the picture. That I'll be talking later part, but please do remember this one. Now, when we talk about aerosols, it is essentially important to also talk about the clouds, though I will not be able to cover the instrumentation part for cloud, but I thought to just give you a very overview, the linkage between aerosol and cloud, so that you can follow up. So I just described what is aerosol, and these aerosol particles act as a sheet for the cloud formation. So here, if you see my slide, my cursor, this is the sheet of the cloud droplets, and the water vapor is nucleated around this aerosol particle. And this is a one droplet. So one droplet has particle in the center at the nuclear, at the center, and the water vapor is nucleated around this particle. And this is called this aerosol particle is called CN, cloud nuclei, and this whole system is called cloud droplet. And such million cloud droplet, combine together to form a clouds. Okay, so please differentiate between the cloud droplets and the cloud. This is the cloud, which consists of millions of cloud droplets. So as I mentioned that you should have aerosols and then water vapor or moisture and certain atmospheric process which happen like convection and turbulent mixing, which I'm not going to talk about. And that basically forms the clouds, cloud droplets, and essentially the clouds. And the size of the cloud could be from 10 to 20 micrometer, and concentration typically will be about 10 to 1000 per cubic centimeter. And rain droplet is about 10 to 100 micrometer. So I just mentioned about the direct effect of aerosols. And before I talk the indirect effect, I thought to introduce what is clouds, because the indirect effect is directly related to the clouds. So here you see that because of the scattering and absorbing nature, it can scatter or it can absorb the incoming radiation from the sun. And the other important effect of this is the direct effect. This is categorized as the direct effect because particle is directly involved with the, interacting with the incoming solar radiation. But in this case, where the particle is not directly, involving, but what it is, because I just mentioned that the particle act as a CN, the cloud droplet, cloud droplet nuclei, and it form the cloud droplets, and it interact with the incoming solar radiation. So here, if you see that this is the droplets, and which is interacting with incoming solar radiation. So here, aerosol particle is not directly interacting with incoming solar radiation. It first form the clouds and then it is interacting. That's why it is called indirect effect. So aerosols particles have both direct, which is mostly involved with the interaction of incoming solar radiation with the particle directly. But another category is the indirect effect, which is basically aerosol cloud and radiation interactions. Now, a question arises that why we should study aerosol and clouds is, I have just taken few photographs from the wave side, which is basically some the floods and drought scenario we have been observing over in our country for the last few decades. And what I found recently is that if you see the drought and the normal year and flood year, if you see this is the year from 1870 to 2020, and this is the no rainfall anomaly over Indian region. I'm not going to detail what other parameters are described here, but what essence you can, what take home message you can have it from this slide is that if you see last 20 years trend, the drought, the frequency of the abnormal monsoon is increasing, because that is indicated over here, the trend. So in addition to that, this is impact on monsoon. Somewhere you see the drought, somewhere you see the floods. Now another important impact which we can see here from this slide is that it not only affects our weather and climate, it also affects the human health. If you see this is the particle size range. I mentioned that the size ranges from 10 to the power -3 micrometer to 10 to the power 2 micrometer. So the smaller particles, the smaller let us start from the top. So the larger the particle size, it affects the upper portion of the human body, and the medium-sized particle mostly in the the heart and lung, and the lower part is basically mostly sensitive to these smallest particles. So this has very, very important role in our human health, particularly the elderly and young children. So this is a very important impact on our human health. In addition to that, you see the visibility, air quality, visibility of the atmosphere. This is the two events. The photograph was taken, and the particulate matter, the aerosol particles, whose radius dynamic diameter is less than 2.5 0.5 micrometer, and concentration was measured again for this PM 2.5. And for this case, it was 7.6 microgram per meter cube. And the same place, another event, a photograph was taken, and this case, the concentration increased by about around 8 times, and you see, or 9 times. And you see here that you don't see anything over here. What you could see here, you don't see anything over here. So that's a very important role in the visibility of the atmosphere. It also has impact on our remote sensing. I'm sure that maybe the next speaker, tomorrow's speaker, will talk about this one, so I'll not touch upon this one. Now we have understood the motivation that why we should study aerosols, and therefore we have the to understand their the characteristic, we must need to measure it. And how we measure it? There are two important platforms through that we can measure. And number one is the in situ measurement, where the sensor is directly in touch with the medium, and the remote sensing, where the sensor is remotely detecting the parameter being measured. So we'll be talking about so this is the different platforms I've been using to study or to measure various atmospheric parameters, especially the aerosols particle, because this talk is specifically aerosols. So I'll talk only the aerosols. So here, if you see that we have a ground-based instrumentations, and also we carry instruments on board the ship. And today's previous speaker also talked about some shipboard measurement. Okay, and in addition to that, we have the unmanned aerial vehicle, nowadays very famous, drone, and we have a aircraft measurements, which previous two speakers have already talked about, and we have a high altitude balloon measurement. In addition to that, we have the satellite-based measurement. So I will touch very briefly each of these platforms. So first, let us talk the in situ observations, that includes ground-based, balloon-borne, and aircraft measurement. So this is the just a list, and I'll be describing in detail, and only the aerosol part, because cloud I'm not considering due to time constraint. So this is the LiDAR, which the first speaker has talked already. So one thing we should all remember during this talk, that thanks to Maxwell for his discovery of electromagnetic wave. And the beauty of this electromagnetic wave, that it interacts with any target object of the atmosphere, whether it is aerosols, clouds, or trace gases. It brings the imprint, or it provides the almost all important information about that target object. If it is aerosols, it will provide the almost all important information we need to know by analyzing the return signal, or any electromagnetic wave which is scattered from this target object. So during this talk, you please remember that when we are sending the electromagnetic wave, which is interacting with the target object, and the return signal is carrying all the information related to this target object. So let us start with the first one, optical particle counter, which is a very portable instrument. This I just given an example, but it can be of any type of optical particle counter. So this optical particle counter provides the number size distribution or number concentration of aerosol particles at different size ranges. I mentioned that the size of the aerosol varies from up to from 10 to the power minus 3 micrometer to 100 micrometer. So this optical particle counter provides the number concentration of aerosol particles at different size beams or size range. How it works is illustrated over here. So this is the schematic diagram of the typical optical particle counter. So it has a let us take that we have a inlet, okay, through which we are taking the ambient air, okay, and this is the chamber where we have the shining with the laser beam. And I mentioned that because of this interaction of electromagnetic radiation with this particle, some amount of radiation will be captured, because this is the scattered radiation, and this is directed to the the detector, and detector counts the number and size, and this is the vacuum through which you are sucking the air from the ambient. So how it works is illustrated over here. But then how we determine because this is just an instrument which gives the signal, but how to convert that signal into a physical parameter such as number concentration or size is illustrated over here. So when we design any instrument, we have to calibrate it. So to calibrate, either you should have a known standard or you should have a the standard instrument. If you are calibrating with a known standard, that means if I am going to design an optical particle counter to measure aerosols, I should have a aerosol particles which is whose concentration and size is very accurately known. In this case, what we use is that polystyrene latex, which is commercially available aerosol particle, which is a scattering type particle, because if you see here, the refractive index of imaginary part is 0. You know that the refractive index, the real part and imaginary part. This real part signifies about the scattering nature of particles, whether particle will be scattering or absorbing, that will be decided by this complex refractive index. If refractive index, if this real part signifies the scattering type, and the imaginary part infers about the absorbing nature of the particle. Here, the refractive index of the imaginary part is 0, so this particle is mostly a scattering type particle. So what we do is that, since we know the concentration, the number concentration of this particle, and also size that is obtained from the manufacturer, because this is commercially available, so concentration as well as the size of this PSL is known. So what we do here is that we inject this PSL here, okay, in a controlled manner, and you send a known concentration of known size, and you detect the signal over here, okay. You will get the pulse height and pulse counts. So that pulse height, I am just giving a artificial number over here just for illustration. This is the size of the aerosol particles I mentioned of this PSL, let us say, and this is the pulse height I am getting, pulse height, because when it is scattered, you will get some electrical signal, and that is that is basically a that is called when you have a pulse height analyzer, you count you measure the pulse height, and you also count the pulses from each scattering event, okay. So you have this pulse height, okay. This pulse height is proportional to the number concentration. So if you increase the number concentration, you also see the increase in the pulse height, and that is exactly calibrated to get the number concentration. Now you are also counting the pulse. So the pulse height. The pulse height signifies the size of the particle. I'm sorry. The pulse height signifies the size of the particles, which is exactly shown over here. So for when you inject different size of the PSL, you will get different pulses in your the detector side, and that is plotted pulse height versus particle size. So you get this calibration curve. Another case, when you are counting the pulse, if you increase the pulse, you also get increment in the pulse counts. So when you increase the number concentration of particles, you also see the pulse count is increasing. So this pulse count is calibrated for particle number concentration. So if you plot this pulse count versus particle number concentration, you'll get this calibration. So next time, this instrument will not give you the concentration directly. It first calculate the pulse height and translate into the size, and then it also count, and then it translate to the number concentration. It is very similar, like you give 1,000 rupees to your kids, okay, and ask him how much he spends. If he spends all the amount that he has already exhausted, but if he spends only 800, that means 200 somewhere, he has spent. So this is the concept. And now you take another example. In 1,000, if you have a few hundred currency, few 200 and few 500, this signifies the size of the particle and how much he has spent, what currency he has spent. If you have given from your pocket, you know that how much you have given. So this is just a resemble, just give an analogy to understand the calibration of the optical particle counter when we are developing or when we are calibrating. So remember that the pulse height signifies the particle size. So larger the pulse height, larger the size of the particle, and the pulse count infers about the particle number concentration. That means higher the pulse count, larger the particle concentrations. I hope you could follow up. Now this was flown in a winter ICAR campaign, okay, during 2008 and 9. And this is the tethered balloon, which is a small balloon, which can carry 3 kg payload weight, 3 kg instrument up to 3 kg. So we tied this optical particle counter with a small, with radio sonde to measure the number concentration as number concentration of aerosol at different size bin along with metrological parameter. And this is the results. I just, for sake of completeness, I will show you here. We conducted, in fact, 5 experiments, one over here and other 3 places, and also somewhere here. And for sake of completeness, I will show you the results obtained from these 2 locations. So Northern Bay of Bengal, which correspond to this, and the Southeast Arabian Sea, which correspond. So this is the vertical profile of aerosol number concentration for small particles less than 1 micrometer, which is accumulation mode. And this is the scale for coarse particles above 1 micrometer, diameter above 1 micrometer. Okay. So if you see here, this is the altitude from surface, from mean sea level to the above mean sea level, altitude in meter, mean sea level. If you see here, the concentration for both fine mode as well as coarse mode, showed very steady variation up to 400 meter, and after that it decreases very drastically. So that shows that up to 400 meter, this marks the the marine atmospheric boundary layer, and above that the source becomes weakened, and that's why you see both the number concentration of a smaller particle as well as larger particle decreases drastically above 400 meter. Now if you see here another measurement from the same campaign for another location, you see here the vertical profile is entirely different. You see a very, instead of steady variation and drastic decrease, you see here a very gradual steady variation and very gradual decrease up to 950 meter. So that signifies that within 3 weeks time, because this was the campaign carried out during December and January 2008-9, and within 3 weeks time you see this much variation at 2 locations. That signifies how much the heterogeneous of aerosol distribution with space is. Okay. That's why we need a very wide we need a measurement over a large spatial scale, and that's why the satellite comes into the picture, because ground-based measurement cannot be cannot provide all that information which we need at very high resolutions. Now another instrument is the black carbon measurement, which is the aethalometer or Cosmos. Here normally we have the aethalometer in India. many institutes have here. So I just thought to, but I worked on Cosmos, which is very similar to this, but which has other some advantages compared to this. But I'll just briefly talk about this one. So so it has a few basic components again. So you have this atherometer measures the black carbon. Black carbon is a absorbing type aerosols, which absorb the incoming radiation and warm the atmosphere. It's also called the greenhouse particles. You might have learned greenhouse gases, but the black carbon is called greenhouse particles because it complements the greenhouse warming. So how it is measured is illustrated over here. This is the filter, a quartz filter. You collect the particles over on the filter, and you shine with the LED, and you measure the attenuation through photodiode. You have a pump, of course, to bring the air from the ambient to the filter and deposit on the filter. And so what it happens is that you brings the particles from the ambient and deposit here. So before deposition, it first shine this filter, the empty filter, and measure the attenuation. Okay, let us say it is X, the attenuation of that the light before deposition of the particle is X. Now you allow the particle through this pump to deposit on the filter, and then you again shine it. So this time, because the particles are there, your attenuation will be decreased, because some of the particle radiation coming from this source will be absorbed by this particle, and you will get some Y amount this time, okay, which will be different from X, which you get it before particle deposition. So if you subtract X minus Y, you can calculate how much attenuation happen, and that attenuation is basically converted to the BC mass concentration. So I'm not going to detail here, but this is the spot area where the particle is depositing, and the V is the volume, how much air you are taking from the ambient. And this is derived from Beer-Lambert. I'm sure you might be knowing here about the Beer-Lambert principle. So you know the initial intensity, you know the intensity after deposition. If you subtract that, you'll get the attenuation and total attenuation due to deposition, and that attenuation is converted to the black carbon if you know the mass absorption cross sections. So at every 1 gram, how much the every 1 gram of black carbon, how much it is offering the area to the incoming radiation, that is the mass absorption cross section. So this is required to convert the absorbed attenuation to calculate absorption coefficient, and then from absorption coefficient you need to know mass absorption cross section. For black carbon, it is about 10 meter square per gram. That means every 1 gram of black carbon offer hypothetically about 10 meter square cross section to the incoming radiations. Okay, that is the physical significance. And this is the example graph of the ground-based measurement of black carbon over Hyderabad during 2009 to 2010. The x-axis is the month, and y-axis is the hour from 0 to 24 hour, and the color bar is the black carbon mass concentration in microgram per meter cube. If you see here, during winter, we have winter, and specifically during morning hour and during evening hour, we have a high black carbon mass concentration, basically due to the city traffic that is clearly reflecting over here. And previous speaker, Dr. Suresh Babu, also shown in his presentation about this experiment. So this exactly the same atherometer was configured for high altitude balloon borne measurement, and this is the typical balloon payload. Looks like you have this is the atherometer and other the instruments, supporting instrument for power and all. And this is the just after launch how the balloon looks like in the air. And we measured black carbon aerosol up to around 8.5 kilometer. And this is the profile which we obtained. And this is the x-axis is the mass concentration, and y-axis is the altitude. You see here two prominent peak of black carbon mass concentration, one at 4.5, another at 8.5 kilometer. So combining these two, this layer is very, very important because I just shown here the cloud layer. This is the rainy cloud layer. And I mentioned that the black carbon is absorbing type aerosols. If the black carbon is persisting over here for longer period, then it may burn the cloud, because this this black carbon is absorbing type. That means it hits the layer around it. If it hits the water vapor which is there in the cloud will evaporate. So this cloud will not precipitate. If there is no precipitation, there won't be monsoon, and you will see the drought. So this is very, very important results which we obtained from this balloon-borne observation. So what I was talking about is this one actually. So since if this black carbon is a regular player of that layer at 4.5 and 5 at 8.5 kilometer, then it is going to impact the cloud micro, the radiative effect. And this is just illustrated over here. I have also shown here the derived heating rate by combining this profile in addition to the satellite derived extinction coefficient from Calypso. I'll be talking in a brief. So you see here, if the particles, if this particle which exists is mostly absorbing type black carbon, then it will definitely modify the atmospheric structure, this temperature, and also the heating rate, and consequently it also modify the cloud microphysics. Specifically, it may burn the clouds, and if there is a burning, the cloud will not develop. If cloud will not develop, there won't be precipitation. If there is no precipitation, there is no monsoon. So it is linked with the so that's very important information. I just wanted to bring it to your notice. Now this the same instrument was also flown in aircraft, and this is the profile obtained at 3 different locations: Chennai, Hyderabad, and Kanpur. And you can see the 3 different locations. You see that the vertical distribution of black carbon is entirely different. So it is very important to have such measurement and investigate their spatial vertical variations. Now, so far I talked about the ground-based measurement over here, optical particle counter and atherometer, and this was also flown in a balloon and aircraft. But the column, what we could measure is up to certain with the ground-based, we could measure up to near surface, and with the aircraft or balloon, we can measure up to certain altitude, let's say 10 kilometer or 20 kilometer. But beyond that, what is happening, that we don't know it. And that's why the column measurement is very, very important. So I'll be briefly touching upon, because it has been already discussed. So you have this, the sun photometer on the ground. This is again a ground-based measurement instrument, but it provides the column properties of aerosols. So what it does is that we have the detector over the sun photometer here, which has the optical filter and photo detector. It receives the incoming solar radiation at different filters, optical filter, and because of the presence of the aerosols, some amount of radiation is scattered and absorbed. So you get the radiation I lambda over here. And so this is the radiation at the top of the atmosphere. We assume that at the top of the atmosphere, the radiation is not influenced by any aerosols. So this is denoted as I lambda 0, and the radiation received at the sun photometer site is I lambda, and this is approximated with the Beer-Lambert, and the flux here I lambda is approximated, the flux is expressed over here, and the parameters are also shown over here. So one important parameter which is which we are interested is this optical thickness or optical depth. Rest all are some parameter which you might be knowing. This RM is the mean, and RM and R are the mean and actual sun earth distance, and F0 is this one exactly, and M is the air mass, which is nothing but the sec of zenith angle, and zenith angle, you know that from zenith where the sun location is. So that is theta 0, which is approximated at certain angle by this theta 0. So if you know this, the flux which you could measure I0 is constant, and if you can measure I lambda at different filter, you can detect, we can determine the aerosol optical thickness. So this is approximate as a voltage because it is a photodiode detector. So you convert electrical signal to, the light photon into a electrical signal, and that is expressed in voltage, and that is expressed over here. So you take the log, the log of both sides, and then you can convert. You can finally, write this aerosol. Derive the expression for total optical thickness. This because in the atmosphere, I mentioned that we have air molecules, gas, and other atmospheric gases. So the combination of all gives you the total optical depth, including aerosol. And if you want to calculate only aerosol, then you need to subtract the effect of the air molecules and gaseous absorption, and which is depicted over here. So how you calculate the Rayleigh and gaseous absorption is given over here. So using this formula, we can calculate the Rayleigh contribution and gaseous. Once you take into account this, then you can subtract over here, and you can calculate the aerosol optical thickness, because this is known already from here, and only factor which are unknown is tau Rayleigh and tau gaseous absorption, which can be calculated using these two simple equations. And this is the Langley technique, which already has been mentioned in your the previous talk. So this is the relative air mass I shown here, the sec theta 0, and this is the log ln, which you can take the log of this one, and then you can plot it. So if you see this expression, this is y is equal to mx plus c. So this is the equation of a straight line. So you can fit this, and the slope will be total optical thickness. And I mentioned that once you know the total optical depth, and if you know the Rayleigh and gaseous absorption from this, you can calculate the the aerosol optical thickness, which is shown in the next slide. And this is the typical instrument, the sun photo, the multi-wavelength radiometer developed in SPL in-house, and the sun photometer, which is commercially available. So it has this has 5 filter and detector. It has 10 filter and 1 detector. And this is the result, which is the aerosol optical thickness on the color scale, and the x-axis is the month from January to December, and the y-axis is the hour, because it has to be measured when the sun is available. So it is obviously from sunrise to sunset, from 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Okay, so unlike 24-hour measurement, because sun is the source for this measurement, you're using solar radiation as a source for your measurement. So you have the measurement during sunrise and from sunrise to sunset. So this is the the color bar is optical thickness at 500 nanometer. I mentioned that it has a 10 filter, 380, 400, 450, 500, and up to 1025 nanometer. I just selected 500 nanometer for illustration. If you see here, you don't see much diurnal variation of aerosol optical thickness, unlike you have seen for ground-based, the black carbon concentration, because this is the contribution near surface, but this is the aerosol optical thickness infers about how much variation is taking place between surface to top of the atmosphere. So it is an integrated quantity. So you don't see much diurnal variation. I mean, from morning to evening, you don't see much variation, but you do see the seasonal, monthly variation of aerosol optical thickness. If you see here, during pre-monsoon, March, April, May, you see the enhanced aerosol concentration, and during June, July, obviously during monsoon, because of the atmospheric washout, you don't see much aerosols in the atmosphere. As a result, the aerosol optical thickness is also very low. So this is the what is the significance of this aerosol optical thickness is that if AOD is less than 0.1, it is mostly a clean atmosphere, and if it is a unitless quantity, okay. So if AOD is between 0.1 to 0.2, then your atmosphere is moderately polluted, And if it is between 0.2 to 0.5, it is polluted. And if it is in greater than 0.5, then it is highly polluted. So this is the, now the previous speaker have already talked about the LiDAR, and very brief, as I mentioned that in this LiDAR, we send the electromagnetic wave, and it, we receive the return signal as a function of, time from different, layer of the atmosphere. And because each region has a certain amount of particles and gaseous molecules, so we receive the back scatter signal in the receiver, or you might have, you have seen that it's a telescope, basically a detector part. And since you know the time at which you are transmitting and the time when you are receiving, so this time and the speed of electromagnetic wave, so the time, the speed of light, you can calculate the range, and this is exactly depicted over here. Okay, so since it is taking 2 times time, because it is going on, onwards, and then going back, so you have to divide by 2 to calculate the range. So I'm sure that you might have followed from the previous speaker. And this is the typical LiDAR equations, where the received power is the function of calibration constant or system constant, and this is the range which I just mentioned, from where you are getting the back scatter, and some parameter related to the the molecules and particle, and this is the transmittance on the way, and then back to the that's why you have multiplied by 2, because on the way it is this much, and reverse towards this receiver, again it encountered the same atmosphere, so you have to multiply by 2. And as you can see here, this is the just one equation, and the molecular back scatter and molecular scattering, molecular back scatter and molecular extinction coefficient is known. So beta m and sigma m are known, but we don't know the particulate back scatter coefficient and extinction coefficient. So this is just one equation, but 2 unknown. So you need to express one parameter in terms of other, and that's why we define another parameter that is called LiDAR ratio. So what we do here is that we get the extinction coefficient from this measurement, okay, and we integrate this extinction coefficient to calculate the aerosol optical thickness. And we have independent measurement of AOD from another sun photometer, and we iterate to fine tune this depolarization ratio. So we start with some iteration, and we give some initial value, and we fine tune that this aerosol optical thickness derived from LiDAR is exactly matching with aerosol optical, not matching, but it to some degree of uncertainty, both AOD derived from LiDAR and sun photometer or matching, then we fix that LiDAR ratio. Because if you don't fix the LiDAR ratio, which is the ratio of this extinction coefficient and back scatter, because these two are unknown, you have to express these two terms with some another which is known, then only you can replace so here you can replace this extinction coefficient in terms of back scatter if you know this LiDAR ratio. That is the one disadvantages of having a single wavelength, but this can be done if you have a dual wavelength, that is the Raman LiDAR, and that I'm not going to discuss, but previous speaker have already talked about. So this is the range squared signal, which is nothing but you multiply this received power and the distance, or this is the range, and you get this signal over here. So this is the range squared signal, the diurnal variation of range corrected signal as a function of altitude, which shows that during monsoon you have a very stratified aerosols layer. You see here up to 1.5 you have a very thick layer, then in between there is almost nothing, very weak, but then you see very thick layer again over here, and then again in between very nothing, then so it is a kind of a sandwich structure of aerosols during monsoon season over Hyderabad. This is the measurement carried out using boundary radar developed by NARL and commissioned at TFR balloon facility for 1 year. So Dr. Bhavani Kumar provided this LiDAR system for 1 year observations, and we made this results published in a very good journal. And this is the typical profile of the extinction coefficient. I hope you might have heard from the previous talk that what is the extinction coefficient. And this is, you see here all 4 season, you don't see a similar extinction coefficient again. That clearly signifies that during all 4 season, the vertical distribution of aerosols are changing a lot. That information is really is reflecting from this graph. So that could be associated with the source from where the different distinct aerosols are transporting. It could be a role of the meteorological conditions, and that needs to be investigated in details. Now, so far we talked about the ground-based instrument, which can only infer about the near surface observation. And we have LiDAR, which can only infer about at certain altitude, and also aircraft, which can also infer, and balloon up to certain altitude. But these are limited to a particular location or particular area, region. It cannot provide a global until unless you have a network. And establishing such a dense network is also very difficult. So there, the role of satellite come into the picture, and that's why we are blessed with the satellite remote sensing with a bulk amount of data to enhance our understanding of aerosol clouds, their radiation impact, to further mitigate the climate issues. So we'll see some of the important information we get from the satellite related to aerosols. There are also satellites to detect the clouds, and also the I have not mentioned that there are also ground-based instruments like radar to measure the clouds from the ground-based. Okay, but I have not touched upon, but it is there actually. So now coming to the how satellite remote sensing works, or how it works to derive the aerosol parameter, that I am going to discuss now. Okay, so this is the small schematic that shows how satellite works. So a layman understanding of satellite remote sensing is that it is nothing but a fingerprint. Okay, if you make your identity card, you go to a center and you give your biometric test, and once it is done, then entire information is recorded in the computer, and when you go next time, you just punch your ID card, everything will be displayed. Now this is just for one person. If you scan 100 people, this fingerprinting will be again will be done. I mean, this will be done for all the people, and everybody will have a very unique signature in their biometric. All will not have the same. Very similar way, the entire globe, the entire region of the earth, Earth will have a very unique signature. For example, if I go to a desert, the atmospheric condition, the types of aerosol will be entirely different. If I go to ocean, the characteristic of aerosol will be different. If I go to the vegetation, the forest, the aerosol characteristic will be entirely different. If I go to a rural, urban, the aerosol characteristic will be different. So each region, like each person, will have a unique identity, and that information is fed to the satellite algorithm to determine or to infer about the aerosol property. So how it does it that? So I just gave an analogy to understand how it works. So how satellite works is demonstrated over here. So we have the incoming solar radiation, okay, and this is the passive sensor. I'm talking about passive sensor, okay. I'll also talk a little about the active when we talk the LiDAR. So it does not have, the satellite does not have its any source, but it is depending upon the natural source of sun, solar radiation. So this sensor, basically what it does is that the radiation coming through the atmosphere, interacting with the particles, gaseous molecule, and is scattered to the satellite sensors, and it detects over here. So this is the flux or irradiance, but you detect a very particular, amount of, the amount of radiation in a very, specified angle, and that is the solid angle. You don't, capture all the radiation coming from all the directions in a random directions. You capture a very particular amount of radiation confined within this solid angle. That's why it is the radiance. When the directional nature of radiation, when directional nature is, involved with the radiation treatment, then the radiance come into the picture. Okay, so this satellite basically captured this radiance, and I mentioned that when you have any electromagnetic radiation coming from the target, it infers about each and everything, most of, not each and every, but most of the information you want to study actually. So this carries the, outgoing, so this is scattered radiation going from the atmosphere will carry a lot of information about the particles, gaseous molecules, and the atmosphere, and this satellite is, sends this signal. As I mentioned that when the satellite is overpassing at a particular locations, it captures the radiation from that locations, and then it, compared from the already inbuilt informations. I mentioned that is a fingerprint. So the satellite knows that if it is passing over a Thar desert, what type of signal it will capture and what type of aerosol it will detect over there. Okay, if it passes over an oceanic region, what type of aerosol it will encounter, radiation it will encounter from the ocean surface, and what it has to inform from that radiation receiving from the ocean surface. So this two clear distinction, satellite always does it, and from there we can infer the desired or physical parameter. So it captured the radiation from any particular locations, and then it matches with the pre-existing pre-feed data which is provided to the satellite algorithm, and it send the data to the ground station. We process it, and then we derive certain geophysical parameters which are important, like aerosols, which are important for our weather and climate study. So before we study this, we must understand the how black body radiation, specifically for passive remote sensing for aerosols. So we use from our UV to visible green wave band and near infrared to detect the aerosols. I am sure that everybody knows about the black body radiation, but I just introduce here that we are talking about the radiation coming from the sun, which has very strong temperature dependency and also the wavelength dependency. Now this is the radiation band used to retrieve the aerosol properties from the space, and the wave band is from 0.3 micrometer to 1 micrometer. So from UV to near infrared, and for cloud and water vapor, mostly infrared and microwave are used. And this is how we retrieve the aerosol particles from the space is illustrated. So left panel is just for comparison I have shown. I already discussed about in my previous slide. This is the ground-based sun photometer, which receives the signal from, which receives the radiation from the sun, and it measures the attenuation due to presence of particles and gases, and subtract the effect of gaseous molecule and air molecule, and derive the aerosol optical thickness tau. But this is the schematic how the aerosol optical properties are derived from this space. So the radiation falls on the atmosphere, and it passes through the Earth's surface, and then we get the back scatter from the Earth's atmosphere and from the surface to Earth atmosphere and back to the satellite sensor. So there is a complicated radiative transfer equation to derive this expression, to derive the optical thickness. I am not going to discuss those details, but I'll just give a very essence of that radiative transfer equations in a couple of minutes. So we derive this optical thickness using this expression, where R is the reflectance. I'll talk little bit about the reflectance in the next slide. And this reflectance is nothing but how much radiation, it characterizes the surface properties, where it is a desert, or whether it is a water body, or whether it is a vegetation. So each surface will have a very, very unique surface reflectance. And then this is the satellite and solar geometry. I'll show you. And then this is the phase function. I referred that the scattering is not isotropic in case of aerosol. It is anisotropic. The radiation is distributed, anisotropically. Okay, either forward or backward, and which is characterized by phase function. I hope you could recall what I discussed in my very beginning of my talk. And this is the single scattering albedo, which basically infers the scattering over the absorbing type aerosols. Okay, so if the single scattering albedo is around 0.8 or around 0.9, then it is mostly, the reason is mostly if you measure single scattering albedo over a location over which if the single scattering albedo is about 0.9, then it is mostly, the region is influenced by or dominated by scattering type aerosols. If it is 0.7, 0.78 or 0.8, then it is mostly an absorbing type aerosol. So that is the physical significance of omega. I hope you could follow up. This is the geometry how aerosol retrieval takes place from the space. So we have the solar radiation. As I mentioned, that the radiation is the source. The incoming solar radiation is the source for aerosol retrieval from a passive remote sensing. So we have the minus mu0 and phi 0, which is basically the angle, and it is and then the radiation passes through the atmosphere, go to the surface, and then it back to the satellite sensor, which is at another angle mu and phi. Okay, so using this geometry, we can calculate the we can determine the mu and mu0, where the satellite is there and where the solar angle is there with respect to the zenith. And once we know this, so we are characterizing one by one to determine the aerosol optical thickness. So I discussed about this mu and mu0 because this directly come from the geometry, and geometry is very well understood, so we can immediately determine. Now the next is the very important is the surface reflectance, which is mentioned over here. As I mentioned that each region will have a different surface reflectance. The forest, vegetation, urban, soil, sand, each surface will have a very unique surface reflectance that has to be parameterized or model and provide this input to the the satellite algorithm. So next time when the satellite overpass at a given location, for example, if it is a forest, so it should match. This region is a forest, so it will take the surface reflectance from the for the forest region, and that it will it will put here into the formula which is shown over here. So far I discussed mu0 and surface reflectance. Now coming to P and omega, the phase function. Now this is very, very important. The graph where so not only the surface reflectance but also the aerosol reflectance, which is also very important. And if you see here that if it is a smoke type particle, or whether it is a dust type or sea salt particle, or whether it is a three categories or basically categorized over here. So you see here this x-axis is the wavelength, and y-axis is the aerosol reflectance. Remember, this is not surface reflectance, this is aerosol reflectance. Okay, so each region, as I mentioned, that the forest area will have a different aerosol types, vegetation, urban, soil, and sand, desert area, each area will have a different aerosol characteristics and different surface, different aerosol reflectance. And these are shown over here. So this is the spectral variation of aerosol optical reflectance. You see here the dust and sea salt. The dust and sea salt are the large particles, and the larger particle showed very weak, very weak spectral dependency. But a smaller particle, you see here, this the box, the green box is for dust and sea salt. You see here, it does not the aerosol reflectance does not vary with the wavelength. It is more or less similar. But if you see the smoke pollution, from city, urban, smoke pollution from burning or anything you burn, that clearly indicates a very strong spectral dependency. As you increase the wavelength, their aerosol reflectance is decreasing drastically, actually. Okay. Or in a reverse way, you can say that when the wavelength is increasing, the aerosol reflectance is also increasing. So the smaller the wavelength, higher the aerosol reflectance, and higher the wavelength, smaller the aerosol reflectance. So this is a very typical characteristic to distinguish different types of aerosols, whether it is a dust and sea salt or smoke. So this information is also provided into the satellite algorithm. So this is another, like a fingerprinting. You provide this information to the model of the satellite. Now the next is the omega, which is the single scattering albedo. So there is a network to measure this single scattering albedo from all over the world, and it you can see here that for the forest smoke, in developing world, you see that the single scattering albedo is about 0.9, and for urban industrial it is 0.96. Highly absorbing region, you see here it is 0.85. So each region has, as I mentioned, that very unique characteristic of aerosols, and these informations are also provided into the model of the satellite algorithm. And so far we mentioned that we understood that omega, the single scattering albedo, is obtained from the ground-based network across the globe, and this reflectance and the surface reflectance, all informations are, and then geometry, all informations are feed into this formula, mu 0, and phase function, and omega, and the surface reflectance, and then you finally calculate the aerosol optical thickness, and that is the whole procedure to calculate the aerosol optical thickness. And this is the another important parameter, the phase function. As I mentioned that the phase function is the size dependent. As the size increases, more forward scattering takes place, and this is the graph where how the phase function varies with the scattering angle. I hope you recall the plot which I have shown in the beginning, that the scattering angle. So you see here for gaseous molecules, because gaseous molecule is has isotropic radiation. So for that you don't see any variation in a phase function here. This is for gaseous molecules because the radiation is isotropic. But if you see aerosol and clouds, the radiation, scattered radiation, is not isotropic, it is anisotropic. So you see a large variation of phase function for for aerosols and clouds as a function of scattering angle. So this information is also provided into the satellite algorithm. So you have all the information into this formula. You have mu 0 phase function I just discussed, omega from global network, ground-based network, and surface reflectance. So all provide, you provide all the information and you calculate aerosol optical thickness. So this is the summary of any satellite algorithm. So you have a geolocated reflectance, and then you have a surface information, and then you have a aerosol model. I mentioned that because each region will have a different aerosol characteristic. So you also model, and then you mix their, then also you study their, the mixing status, mixing of aerosols. And then based on the radiance, because satellite will receive the radiance I mentioned here. If you remember that it will, it measures the radiance, and that radiance is converted. That radiance will have information about the aerosol, properties, and from that radiance we calculate the aerosol optical thickness by using the those radiance information in the radiative transfer model, and you get the aerosol optical thickness. So this is the summary the flow chart how a satellite algorithm works or satellite derives aerosol optical thickness. And this is just again a artificial number I just mentioned. So this is the wavelength, okay, and this is the reflectance. As I mentioned that it is measured by, or radiance you can see here. This is the radiance measured by satellite and for different wavelength. So satellite always measure this one, and this is made equivalent to the optical thickness. So if satellite measures the radiance about 0.01, it is equal to 0.5 aerosol optical thickness. Yet 2.5 micrometer, if the satellite measure the radiance about 0.14, then the corresponding AOD is about 0.40. This is just a artificial number for illustration purpose. Okay. Now this is the as I mentioned that with the ground based, you cannot have a a global picture of the aerosol properties unless you have a dense network. Okay. So from the satellite, because it is orbiting, you will, and it is covering the entire globe in a period of one day or sometime in a 16 days. If it is like in case of Calypso, I'll be talking a little bit. So you will have a almost daily coverage of entire globe of to derive the aerosol optical thickness, and this is the global spatial distribution of aerosol optical thickness derived from the satellite for 4 different seasons. This is for March, April, May, June, July, August. This is the monsoon. This is a pre-monsoon, and this is September, October, November, the fall or post-monsoon, and this is the winter, December, January, February. And this is the color bar. Sorry, I think this color bar is not very visible, but I just want essence of this slide is that you see here a very distinct seasonal variation, and also the spatial variation of aerosol optical thickness. That signifies that each region is influenced, and each region has a different characteristic in terms of the column aerosol loading it. So that is the essence of this figure. Now, if you see here, this is just a one view. The satellite has just one angle measurement. If you implement multi-angle, then you can again you can improve your measurement, and that is that I'm not going to discuss due to time constraint, but you can I'll share this information. If you have any questions, feel free to write me back. So this is the difference with the single view sensor and multi-view. You can clearly see that those feature which cannot be captured by a single view can be clearly captured by a multi-view multi-angle view satellite measurement. That is the beauty of having a multi-angle view measurement from the space. That's the essence you can take from this slide. Actually. Another this is the spaceborne LiDAR. I talked about ground-based LiDAR, but this is a spaceborne LiDAR which is operating since 2016, and it has 2 channels at 532 and 1064 nanometer. And in addition to that, it has parallel and perpendicular polarizations at 530 nanometer. Using these 2 combinations, it provides, this is again the same equation I'm repeating, but I'll not go through. And using this 2 information, the backscatter at 532 nanometer and 1064 nanometer, and polarizations, parallel and perpendicular polarization at 530. That means it sends the at one particular polarization, and it measures the return at another polarization. And by making this ratio, it can provides a very, very important information to distinguish different components of aerosols. As I mentioned that the different types of aerosols can be from marine, from dust, polluted dust, biomass burning, and this can be clearly discriminated using the Calypso information. So we have a backscatter color ratio at 532 and 1064. This is just a backscatter coefficient at 2 channels, 532 and 1064. And this is the extinction color ratio at 532 and 1064. So using this combination, you can discriminate different different components of aerosols, because each component will fall in this graph in a different place. So using this information, you can infer about the different composition. And this is the summary of different aerosol subtypes for 4 seasons over entire Indian region. I'm not going to talk in a very detail for each region. We have summarized for 6 regions, but here I'm just giving an overview of how a typical aerosol subtypes look like as a function of altitude for 4 seasons for entire region. So if you see for winter season, mostly the near surface or below boundary layer is mostly the smoke and polluted continental. The description is given over here. Mostly smoke and polluted. And most importantly, which I am very much interested, is in between 4 to 6, because as I said that it is a rainy cloud. So it really made attention to carefully look into this the data which is showing between 4 to 6 kilometers. But you can see how vertically the aerosol subtypes varies for each season. You see what you see during winter, you don't see such such features during fall and summer on average. But what important and common feature which you can notice here is that the most of the season during between 4 to 6 kilometers is the polluted dust and smoke here, polluted dust and I mentioned that the polluted dust and smoke, they are absorbing type aerosol. If their absorbing type aerosol exists at that layer, okay, that has to be confirmed from the chemistry. And I mentioned this is the rainy cloud region. It is going to be, impact the entire the cloud microphysics there, and we may have a very severe impact on our monsoon pattern because of this, if they are persistent. And we have checked it for 10 years data, it is persisting. Okay, so that's a very important attention for the community that this layer is existing, and how to overcome that has to be addressed. So in summary, what we learn about why important measurement of aerosols, and and how the ground-based measurement, and from how what information we can obtain from the ground-based measurement, and how the ground-based measurement can be further taken up with the help of satellite measurement, and how the satellite measurement can make the change the the entire the aspects of our understanding. That also has been touched in this presentation. And some of the important results I have covered from balloon and research vessel, aircraft, and also satellite. So in summary, the life without aerosols, this is the summary actually of my entire talk. If there is no aerosols, no clouds. If there is no cloud, no precipitation, no water, and no life. So with this, I thank you very much. And this is the quiz. I think you can try this. I just prepared for you. And now you can ask me where to get the some important information about this subject. You can get all these books available, and if you don't find, please let me know. You can also read some papers published, the journals, published paper in the journals, and this is the list where you can get. Now you can ask me how to get the data. Okay, if you have some limitation that you don't work with the instrumentation, but there are plenty of data available at free of cost, and this is the list where you will get all the data you want. And I make sure that if you really work, you will never be able to finish in entire life. That much data is available at free of cost. And these are the this link which I have just, but there may be other which I might have missed it, but this is which I have worked up so far I have used in my for my own research. And once you know the data, how to analyze that data, there is a capacity building training program conducted by ISRO and also NASA, and I have provided the link. You can go through this link and register for free of cost. You can attend this workshop, and time to time you will be updated about the upcoming program. You can learn how to visualize the satellite data, how to make use to bring some physical some meaningful information from those satellite data. Everything will be, you will be able to get it. And very brief, I'll now, in 5 minutes, I will just finish it. We have a very nice climate observatory, which is about 35 kilometers from our existing IST campus, and students also visit there. It's a high altitude site, which is about 1.1 kilometer near the coast, which you can see from this graph. And these are the instruments we have been commissioning, and some of them are already commissioned. And I have a small video for you. If you permit me, I will show you that.
Yes, sir. It's 3:20. How long is the video?
Just 3 minutes. My video is
Okay,
just 3
sir.
minutes.
Okay, sir.
Sorry. I'll just share the video. If it works, that will be really nice. If it works, just respond me.
Yes, sir. We are able to see that.
So I'll just show you a brief about a small balloon, small payload that is called ozone sonde radius sonde launch using a small weather balloon. So this is the preparation of the payload. We prepare a commercial available ozone sonde to measure vertical profile of ozone from surface to 35 kilometer, along with temperature, pressure, humidity, wind speed, and wind direction. So this is the calibration, pre-preparation, pre-flight launch operations from Panmudi, IST Panmudi, high altitude site. So this is, we measure the flow rate to ensure that the pump is sufficient to, take the air from the ambient. So this is the flow calibration, flow check of the pump, flow rate. So we fill helium gas, and this is the very recent. I just combined two, my team, and you see the background is a high altitude, highly terrain atmosphere. So wind is very strong, so it is very difficult to hold some time. So Gaurav is MTech student. So we involve our students to, do the experiment. Sometimes they themselves fill the gas and do everything. I normally be just behind them, and they do everything. So our director and dean, Professor Chandrasekhar and Dr. V.K. Dadwal, they were there for first lunch.
पता है इतना तो लोग पैसा लगाते हो.
So that's all. So any of the participants have any queries related to this launch can write to me. If you have any plan to fly few hundred gram payload, please feel free to write to me. And this is the recovery operation, because balloon, the pilot falls somewhere with the with the help of parachute. So we take help of people, public, to get it back, that instrument, because it's around 1 lakh Indian rupees instrument, and we pay reward around 2,000. Those who return us or just give a call from the the lending side. So we've been today. He is also there. I think he went for one recovery. So we involve our students for all balloon operations time to time. So I thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
So